Thanks a lot to everyone who posted up questions. I'm going to try to get through as many as I can with as little sarcasm as possible. Some things I just don't have answers for. Some things I don't even have excuses for. But I'll make something up. Later on, I'm going to announce the winner of my signature model, the JA90 from Fender Guitars. I'm sort of a bit bummed there wasn't an essay portion on the entry, but, you know. All right, let's get into some questions, some hard-hitting stuff here.
Hey Jim, I'm wondering if you'd explain what the significance is of Big Casino, considering you had a side project and a song with that phrase in it. Also, what is the best burrito in the Phoenix area? Huge fan here, love the show, thanks.
It's a phrase I first heard in a Richard Ford short story where two characters are talking about like a kind of guy who's sort of burnt out, and they say something like, oh yeah, he's Big Casino. I had no idea at the time they were referring to cancer. In my head, the phrase Big Casino kind of evoked a sense of this person suffers from delusion. You know, they think they're more important than they are. It's sort of like a character of complete unearned confidence trying to fake their way through everything. And I thought that was an interesting phrase and an interesting idea of a character like that. And that's kind of what became the jumping off point for the character in Big Casino, for the main speaker in Big Casino, the song. Best Phoenix burrito? I don't want to start a war here, man. And it depends on what kind of burrito you want, you know? Do you want something that's like more gourmet? Do you want to be careful your plate is hot type burrito? I mean, I don't know. I do think some highlights are the Los Dos Molinos. Anything at Los Dos Molinos is going to be good. Mangoes in Mesa actually has a really good burrito. And although I think it's kind of a sort of a missed opportunity on the rest of the menu, if you get a burrito at Gallo Blanco, you probably won't be, you know, disappointed.
Hi, my name is Sissy, and my favorite songs from Jim Eat World is 555 and Disintegration. I was wondering, what is your favorite songs to play on tour?
Our favorite song to play on tour. I think we're always the most excited by the newest thing. I think it's true with just about everybody. Like, you're excited to share this thing you just did. So I would say maybe the Material on Surviving is what we're most excited to play.
Hey Jim, it's John in Kansas City. I hope you and your family and the guys are all doing well. Thank you so much for doing the podcast. I am absolutely loving it. My question for you is, what are some suggestions you can offer for staying motivated during times like we're living in right now? Thanks.
Maybe one thing is just to chase what you're excited about. I think a lot of it comes down to momentum. It's kind of physics, isn't it? Like, it's a lot easier to stay in motion if you're already in motion. So if you're chasing things that you're excited about, then you don't even realize you're putting in that what you're doing is work. And then you can tackle stuff that might be a little harder or more ambitious.
Hi Jim, Jeff in Colorado here. One of the themes of Pass-Through Frequencies has been the challenge of writing lyrics. Do song titles and album artwork and video concepts and things like that cause the same anxiety, or do they flow out of the organic creative process?
So I think you're talking about basically the non-lyric part of everything that is music or albums. Song titles can be tough. There's always the tendency to just take the easy route and call it something that gets repeated in the song a lot. And then you can think, oh, we're not going to do that because that's easy. So I'm going to pick something that's like a really obscure reference to something in a later part of the lyrics. Usually you go for something that's a reference from a lyric. But if there's nothing clearly that jumps out right away that just feels like it, then it usually leads down a road of difficulty. It's not uncommon for a song of ours to not get its final title until like mastering. Like when there's no other thing that you're waiting on except for a song title. By the time it comes down to making artwork, we have a pretty good idea of what the album is trying to say. If there is a cohesive message, like how can that be displayed in some way? And then it's a back and forth between us and our ideas and maybe the outside art people that we hire to help us make that real. I love the Jim Eat World product placement secretly you guys have in the background. Like, oh, what that's nothing. I mean, come on, dude. Like, putting merch in your question is going to get your question bumped up. Pfft,
Hey Jim, it's Johnny from California. Just wondering, my question is, on every album, do you guys plan to end every album with a banger? Like, congratulations, 23, Dizzy, and so on?
I don't know, man. If you've ever made a mixtape for somebody, it's kind of the same sort of thing. Like, what do you put last? In this case, it's your own material. Like, I don't see 23 being anywhere else on the track listing for Futures. I don't see Dizzy being on anywhere else except for the end of Chase This Light. I definitely don't see putting Goodbye Sky Harbor anywhere but last on Clarity. By the last song on an album, if you're still listening to that album, that means you've kind of bought into whatever it is that that particular artist is doing. It's a chance to present something new. It's a chance to expand a little bit. For the most part, I think we latch onto that opportunity. Like, here's what we've been doing, but we're going to develop it in a way that is completely just about exploring us. And if you've listened to the rest of the album, that means you might give it a shot.
So you've been making music now for over 30 years. From where you started with your band to where you are now, where do you see yourself in music in another 30 years? Also, you're welcome on the pod anytime.
Hey, Justin, the next 30 years. Oh my God. I would like to think I'm doing music in some capacity in 30 years from now. It's kind of one of the reasons we got here to 30 years is that we didn't really have a solid 30-year plan. You know, we just sort of took things as it came and made the best of it and tried to have fun. That's my plan, is take whatever's going to happen in the next 30 years and just have fun and make the best of it. And yeah, sure, I'll go on your pod. Why not?
Hello, Jim. It's Onur from Turkey, and here's my question. If you could go back in time and re-record one of your songs, which one would it be and what would you change about it? Love from Turkey. Rock on.
I try to listen to our older recordings with a little bit of, cutting myself a break. Because that's like what I knew how to do at the time. And even though currently I might know more or might have different tastes, that's all I could do then. That's all I knew how to do, and that's all I wanted to do. I think we've done a good job about just staying true to that so that anything we do has a sense of, longevity. We're not chasing like whims. We're not chasing trends. We're just doing what feels like the best of what we can do at a time. That being said, I do kind of wish I could go back and re-sing some of the earlier stuff because I think I've gotten a lot better.
Hi, Jim. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on using alternate media like books and film that evoke a certain mood or emotion as a springboard or inspiration for writing a song. And is that something you've done in Jimmy Eat World? Thank you.
Most of Invented was born out of writing exercises that ended up being, generating a lot of real material. I've talked about this before, but I took, I just basically looked at Cindy Sherman's Untitled Film Still series and just did like a 10-minute writing exercise, sort of filling in the backstory of what I just imagined was happening. And that led to, some fleshed out scenes and moods that I thought would be good for songs.
Hey Jim, so I'm currently working on a songwriting project based on the central theme of isolation and using isolation to solve problems while maintaining enough presence to actually do something about it. And it's a fascinating idea to me, the whole idea of getting away from something to kind of see the bigger picture, but not getting too far away that you're completely removed and ignorant to the problem you're solving. My question is, do you have any tips or tricks for, songwriting when it comes to basing all of the songs around a central theme?
This project sounds like an overthinker's dream. Tips to making it cohesive. I don't know. Maybe just figure that out later. Write everything that comes to you. I mean, like, you have your direction and it sounds like that's inspiring to you. You're excited about it, but I wouldn't be so precious about what you come up with, trying to force that into the thing that you think it's going to be. Because I've had songs just die because I was doing that. I talk about this with Bazan, actually, you know, like, here's my cool thing. It's a really good idea. And you try to steer it into that. And yeah, you know, sometimes it goes there, but other times, like, it just feels like you're forcing it. Like maybe it doesn't really want to go there. So you can lean into the idea that you think is interesting, but I wouldn't push it too hard. Like I would let your ideas just become what they're going to become. And then at the end, when you have like this catalog of things that you've just done, then you can use your editing process then to decide which is going to be the cohesive thing. I mean, maybe you end up with not necessarily like an album worth of things that are cohesive, but like an EP or a single of really focused things that are with your idea, and then starters for maybe 6 other things. Did that come out as a tip? I don't know. Maybe I just made things more confusing.
Hey Jim, you guys transitioned to Axe Effects a few years ago. What amps and effects are you guys modeling?
All right, so this is a question that usually clears the room at a party, and I love it. The amps we model are the same ones we would use like at the studio, which are mainly like Marshall stuff, Orange, AC30. I like to stack like a Champ sound as like your solo, because it's kind of like if you just put more and more 412s in there, it's like it's sort of like putting no 412s in there. The cabinets I use are all Justin York's packs at York Audio. But for me, the big deal is the miking position. Oh God, this is going to get like hate mail. I mic everything on axis right at the cone cap because I feel like that's where the most presence is. Like that's where your amp is. Stuff that's like off axis, stuff that's like on the edge of the speaker, like where it just bugs me because it doesn't, like, where is the amp? I don't feel like the amp is there. It's just like this sort of distant kind of dark thing, and that drives me nuts. Like things can't get sizzly and bright enough for me when I'm choosing like what kind of setup I'm making. I'll use effects more like finished sounds, more like aux send to effects and then back in line, as opposed to thinking of it in terms of like your guitar, pedal board, amp, cabinet, front of house. Even if it's like a textural, wide, large reverb kind of sound, I'll build it out a little bit, a lot more dry than I would normally like it, because you got to take in consideration this is going to be in a room, and if you just make it super wet there, it's not going to sound the way you think. It'll sound great in your in-ears, but it's going to sound horrible out front. And the goal is really to have it sound good out front. See what I mean about clearing the room?
Hey man, I'm loving how you're breaking down the creative process. What do you do to not overcook things in your writing and productions?
Oh, we overcook things all the time. We definitely burn it a lot. Basically, you're just moving in this big circle of like, here's my instinct. Let's develop it. Let's add more to it. Oh wait, this we just did this. This gives me an idea to go here. Let's explore that. Well, that opens up some doors. So let's take it over here. Huh. That doesn't really work the way I thought it was. What about this? Okay, well, what about this idea we tried before? 2 BPM faster? No? Okay, you're usually like not far off from where you started, but going down the road of overcooking things is kind of like, you sort of have to do it. You sort of owe it to yourself to explore. I guess you just have to, at some point, have a good idea of what it is you like. And you'll hear that. And at that point, you're done.
Hey, Jim, I was wondering how you came up with the ending to the song Pass the Baby and how you're able to remember all the weird time signatures.
The end of Pass the Baby from our album Integrity Blues. That song was always this conceptual beast. It was always going to take on this journey of pretty and textural into the lowest of stoner rock that we can come up with. The pit of Hades. Maybe this deserves its own mini dive, but I'll give you the short answer. You know, we wanted to make this thing that was evolving, that was disorienting because it was changing all the time. that's what we set out to do. And the way we did that was basically like there's a riff. It's like the basic thing. And then there's certain parts of the riff that change as it develops, like how many times it holds out the low D note, or how many times it holds out the higher D note at the end of the riff, how quickly it goes back into the start of the riff. So it was basically like charting out what's going to happen on which interval, and then memorizing it. There's really no easy way to do it. You just kind of like learn. You just sort of like practice. Okay, here's 1. Now we practice 1 going into 2. Now we practice 1, 2, and 3. It's like memorizing a speech for a class or something. You just start at the beginning and until you feel comfortable there, and then you move on a little bit further, and then you move on a little bit further, because we wanted that sense of disorientation as it's going on. You're like, I don't get it. It just keeps going. I don't get it. Like, well, yeah, of course you don't get it. There's no rhyme or reason to any of it. We just, said this is going to go 3 times, then it's going to go quickly back into the top, then it's going to go on 4 times, then it's going to go 3 on the high part and 2 on the low part. just kind of made it up on the fly, and then that became what the album is.
Hey Jim, was wondering how you approach writing backup vocals and harmonies as well as texture guitar parts.
I don't even know I'm doing it. I really don't. Texture guitar parts usually come about in the demoing phase of things, when the idea is just totally fresh. I'll hear something that isn't there, so I put it in there. Sometimes what I put in there isn't exactly what I heard, what I imagined hearing, and that leads to different ideas, which become other guitar parts, or maybe guitar parts that later become vocal melody parts. The vocal melodies are all dependent on the main vocal. So before I even have real lyrics, I'll be like just singing along with some random scat vocal I made with a different scat vocal that's trying to find the harmonies for it. Not all the time does that really work out to where the harmonies will match or that I'll use them. But pretty much right away, I'm just being open to it and looking for it.
Do Tom, Rick, and Zach wait for you to bring ideas to the table, or all 4 of you working on something separately? I know, at least in the early days, you and Tom were kind of splitting, bringing song ideas, but now in modern day Jimmy Eat World, I would be fascinated to know just the process.
A lot of the time, I'll have the beginnings of something and I'll bring it to the guys and we'll develop it that way. Sometimes I'll have like a finished thing and then it goes through the band editing process into whatever it's going to be from there. We'll all be playing at the same time, and somebody will inadvertently play just, noodling on their own in between the things we're supposed to be doing. And then it sounds like something to the other people, and then that gets just developed. So there's no rules. However an idea is going to happen, like we'll accept it and we'll work on it if it feels like it could go somewhere.
Hey Jim, I've really been loving hearing about the pre-production that you guys do for your records. I wanted to know, do you have any tips for overcoming loving that first demo version of the song too much and not wanting to change it during the actual recording? Thanks.
Demo-itis is a struggle. It can be really hard. I think there's a couple things you should do. Ask yourself and have an answer, why am I recording this in the first place? Why am I re-recording it if what I had was rad? Is there a target you're shooting for? Like have a target. Because if you're just trying to make it better in some way, and you don't really know, you're sort of wasting your time. And if you like what's there, but it's missing a certain something you can't put your finger on, maybe you just take the demo of it and have someone with a little bit more mixing chops take a crack at it. Maybe it's just that. Or you take a route where you purposely put a governor on how much you're going to develop a demo. Like I think Matt Pryor and I talk about this where you purposely set, okay, this is just going to be a vocal and acoustic guitar, and that's it. Not going to worry about anything else until you actually start to turn it into a song with the people you're going to work with. Even then, what you're basically doing is making the final version your demo.
What's up? This is Matias and Octavio. I want to ask you, what are your feelings about this guy? The only music that wants to hear is Jimmy Eat World. Regrets. We are from Mexico.
I can remember being a kid and just wanting to hear one thing over and over and over and over and over. It's cool. If you're a kid. If you're a parent, oh man, I'm sorry.
So when you're producing and arranging new material, do you ever set creative limitations for yourself? Like, say I'm going to stick with these guitars and these pedals and whatnot, or do you leave yourself completely open to all sonic possibilities and just mess around with as many toys as you want? All right, thanks, Jim. Love the podcast.
There's always some creative limitations in place, but they're sort of more defined by the song. Like we don't normally sit around as a prompt and say, we're just using standard tuning guitars with no effects, pedals, and it's got to be a 3-minute thing. It's never that spelled out exactly. Although there are the times where you're working within the perceived limitations for an idea and it just doesn't feel like it's working. And in that case, usually the solution is to go directly outside the limitations, like on purpose. And that leads to something that's actually kind of exciting.
I wanted to learn like the general workflow when you actually go into the studio. I know you do a lot of pre-production in your own studio, which is just amazing. What does it take when you finally get into the studio to just kind of get it all done? How long is that process? And is there still more creative process during that whole production? Sorry for the long video.
Our general workflow goes something like this. We'll be writing here. We'll be demoing here. If we're working with a producer, they'll come here and we'll take a week or two of that, maybe like a week realistically, try out everything we want to try. We have as good as possible of an idea of what we want to do before we go somewhere else, if we're going somewhere else. Drums use the most inputs at one time out of all of our rock band setup instruments. So that's the thing it makes sense to spend money on. Go to a room that has a great sound to it. I mean, not like here doesn't have a pretty great sound, but like go somewhere else specifically that has a desk that we can have a lot of inputs at one time. Do all the drums there. Maybe get as much bass as we can out of the way while we're there. But it doesn't really make sense to go and pay a bunch of money for a studio when you're just using like 4 inputs or like 2 inputs at a time. Like, why? I mean, so you can feel like a rock star? Like, I'd rather put that money in my pocket at the end of the day. Then we'll move to either a smaller studio that we can work at for a while. We've done that before. We've moved to like a place just for overdubs in LA. Most of the time we come back here though. Most of the time we'll come back here and we'll do everything else here. Just because we can. Why not? Economy Island. Oh, and then we'll farm out the finished product for someone who is a better mixer than we are. Because we can. That's another place you spend money, is on mixing.
Hey Jim, so my question is, once you have a completed project or song or whatever you're working on, what checklists or questions do you ask yourself before deciding, okay, yeah, it's done, and it's going to go out on this date?
You know, there really isn't a series of checklists something has to meet before we decide it's ready. If anything, maybe that gets answered before we start making an album. Like if we don't have a batch of songs in a demo state we feel could be an album, then we'll just keep making demos. You know, as far as a release date goes, that's kind of not up to us. It's kind of more about like what label we're working with and what, how clear the runway is there. This is a text-only tweet from Eli Gray. He asks, what camera and mic are you using for PTF? Clarity and quality are both top-notch. After doing a lot of research, I chose the Sony a7 III. It just seemed like the most future-proof value for what I wanted to do with this podcast and for video work in the future for band things. But, you know, the secret is the glass. I went with a G Master 24mm prime. I'm really stoked on that. Oh, as far as mic goes, for a lot of the episodes, I was using a Neumann TLM 103, which I think is the same one Howard Stern uses. And now I'm using a Perlman TM1, which is basically like a U47 knockoff. That goes into my Pro Tools rig over here. You can kind of see the green lights flashing over there. And then I splice that in with the video portion later on. So thanks a lot, you guys, for hanging out and submitting questions. I hope that was interesting. I hope that was something. It definitely was something. So now, without further delay, the winner, the completely random winner of one of my signature model JA90 Fender Telecaster is... Build suspense here. Look at my email. This is so... I was going to do like a bunch of stuff. Let me skip telling you all the exciting stuff I was going to do and just say the winner is Jason Fields. Jason Fields, you are the winner of a JA90 Telecaster from Fender Guitars. Someone will be getting in touch with you soon to go over how to get you a guitar, but that's happening. Congratulations. I really appreciate everyone for subscribing and following along. It's been a pretty wild couple of months. I'm sure it has for everybody, but you know, I just really appreciate your support. I'll try to make this a more recurring kind of thing in the future. Take care. I'll see ya.